Yeah, so I guess we'll just kind of start with the beginning of learning the technique of the opaque stains, which James has been kind of, egging me on for a number of years to do it. And I mastered the translucent stains. They're so easy to do. You just add some pigment in the oil, wipe it on, wipe it off, more or less just like how you do a traditional Odie's oil finish. The difference with the opaque stain is that you're laying the stain, you're working it into the surface, but you're also laying it on the surface. You're leaving a residual amount of product on the surface and leveling it out. And I guess I couldn't wrap my head around it initially because I was so used to buffing it all off. You got to get it all off the surface. But when you present the pigments into the mix, the pigments, the oil is cross-linking, molecular bonding to the pigments and curing.
So what you're doing, what Matthew's doing, in layman's terms, Matthew, it's just like applying any other opaque stain. You're going to put it on, you're going to back roll it or back brush it, level it out, make sure there's no runs or drips, make sure there's no heavy areas. You're going to level it out, even it out, and that's about it. So basically what he did is he put that stain on, wiped it back once with a paper towel,
yep.
Very lightly, didn't scrub it all off, and left it on the surface, let it cure. 30 minutes later, it pretty much hardens up, but for safety's sake, he leaves it on overnight, correct?
Yep.
He left it on overnight, and next morning he came back, put a coat of regular Odie's over the top. Yep. And folks, this was sanded to 150 grit. This was not sanded all the way up to a high grit. It was initially sanded to 150 grit. That's right. Then after he did his stain, he let it cure for overnight. It cured, like I said, it hardens in 30 minutes when you have all that solvent in there and the pigment. But overnight, he let it cure so that he can go ahead and put a coat of Odie's over the top of it without getting any bleed back, which didn't happen. No bleed back. Put it on, and then he let that cure, and then he came back with a 4,000 grit, and it doesn't have to be a 4,000 grit. It could be 1,000 grit. You could
do it with any grit really, like to determine the level of shine that you want. You could do. This was my first attempt, just a basic first attempt, and I was like, hell, I'm just gonna grab a 4,000 grit pad and give it a coat, and
you did a light wipe down. You didn't sand it all off. You just did a light wipe down with the 4,000 grit, just a quick burnish. And then he put another coat of Odie's over the top, and bam, he's got a gloss finish.
Yep.
And it's opaque and it's spectacular.
And there's absolutely zero sanding scratch pattern from the 150 visible because the pigments fill all of that sanding scratch pattern in from the initial sanding. So it fills all that sanding scratch pattern
just in. Like doing a lacquer
finish.
Or a high-end.
It actually looks, I sprayed a lot of lacquer back in the day, and this actually looks very similar, but better than a lacquer finish with far less hassle. A high gloss lacquer finish, you have to no dust and everything's set up properly, no contaminants, sanding in between coats, masking up, spray booths, PPE, all that stuff. And I could do this in my living room.
And it cures and dries hard as a rock. So Craftwood, yeah, he wants you to run your fingers over it. There's several questions that are coming in already. Dries hard as a rock. No oily residue left over at all. Craftwood.
No, yeah, there's no residue on there.
And